So what is going on, guys? Welcome back to yet another video here on the FreakFies YouTube channel. And today we're going to be doing video number 1 of a 2 video series, which is about swooping accessories or canopy piloting accessories. So these are basically accessories that you either have on your rig, which is part 1, accessories that are part of your rig, or accessories that you have that are separate objects or separate things. So we all know that for free flying or for doing a belly jump, you have specific accessories, while for swooping, there's other accessories. So this is excluding, of course, swoop-related big accessories. So for instance, a canopy, of course, we know there are super-specific canopies. This is more things that you will use specifically for swooping and pretty much nothing else. So without further ado, let's get started. So video number 1 is about swooping accessories on your rig. So number 1, we have swoop risers. So if you guys ever took a look at the rig of a swooper after they landed, you might notice that their risers look very thin, almost like they're half the size of a normal riser. So this is normal, and it's very common in swooping. So a normal pair of risers will be basically a 1-inch thick piece of webbing that's facing the wind and creating extra drag. So what swoopers will do is they'll do a low drag modification where they stitch together the front, so they fold the risers in half and stitch them. The front risers you can stitch pretty much all the way. The rear risers you can only stitch a little bit, but you can make them a little bit more aerodynamic. This is to reduce drag, of course, and pretty much everybody in swooping uses them. If you see someone who's not using them, it's because it's some old risers they haven't gotten around to modifying yet. So the most manufacturers now include this modification, so you can ask for it. But if you have old risers, you can ask a rigger and they can modify it to be low drag. And this is a modification that anybody can use. It doesn't have any effect on the way you're flying. Anybody can have thin low drag risers. You just ask for them. They don't have any implications. They don't require extra experience, extra training. They are a bit tricky sometimes to pack, so or to assemble the canopy, you might do some twists, so you need to pay attention to that. Also, swoop risers will have dive loops or Louis loops, whatever. Basically loops that allow you to grab the front risers with 2 fingers or your full hand if you do it like that. And they will have something really, really important, which is anti-twist housing. Now, if you have line twists, these small canopies, swoop canopies, they create a lot of forces due to the fact that they're so small. They spin at very fast rates, and they can create a lot of G's. So when you're spinning with a line twist malfunction, and the line twists actually wrap around the excess cable of the cutaway cables, they can get pinched together and make it really hard to perform a cutaway. I have never experienced this, but someone probably has in the past. That's why there's anti-twist housings on the risers themselves, and you can feel them. They're extra rigid parts on the risers. Now for slow canopies it's not really needed, but for fast canopies it's pretty much mandatory. Everybody uses them and it should be mandatory. So make sure you get onto that. Now number 2, long chest strap, of course, and a place to store it. So when you're learning to swoop, you'll start to lean forward. It transfers a little bit of the weight of the canopy forwards, transfers a little bit of your weight forwards in the canopy, and kind of makes you climb a little bit better and makes you, of course, a little bit more aerodynamic. So everybody pretty much uses this technique of leaning forwards, almost doing like a Superman landing, where it's not really a Superman, you're just leaning forwards. It's going to be less used in the future due to the fact that the supine position on the Mutant is being more used now. So you'll stop seeing people do this, or maybe it still will. I see some guys doing it on the Mutant even. But long chest strap basically allows you to lean forwards. Now, I don't mean a long chest strap like a little bit longer than normal. This is really like a normal thing. You can even order it for free flying. I mean like so long where if you lean forwards completely, it's basically the same place as your belly band. Now, this is useful for people that are learning how to swoop and all that, and they really don't want to use a chest strap, a belly band yet. I think you should have some experience to use the belly band. There's things to learn before you put on a belly band and start leaning forward and putting pressure on it when you're leaning forward. So I used just a long chest strap for a long time, and of course having a place to store it after you open is really useful as well. And so a lot of people put a little bit of an elastic on their chest strap ring, Some people put an elastic on their belly strap ring. I used to not even put an elastic anywhere and just wrap the chest strap on the elastics that I used to hold them, to hold the chest strap close. So you gotta have a lot of elastic for it not to come loose when you're free falling, and you have a place to store it where it doesn't get tangled on your reserve handle. If you do need to use a reserve handle after you remove your chest strap, which is really, really unlikely, but it might as well not be in the way. And if you have, of course, a altimeter on the chest strap like I use, you gotta attach it somewhere where it doesn't interfere with the altimeter for you to be able to see it. So I attached it to the hips, but I already attached it to the chest strap ring, so I've used it in both places, and it's pretty much the same. Maybe the chest strap, the hip ring is a little bit faster because you don't have to wrap it. You can just fold it in half and attach it to there, so I prefer it to use it. That's why I use it now. Number 3, of course, after you're proficient with a long chest strap and all that, you can actually start using a belly band. Now, there's a lot to talk about belly bands, especially for such a simple concept. There's a lot of modifications that can be done, a lot of different ones. But the ones I see mostly used are the 1 inch and 1 3/4 inch belly bands, so type 8 and type 17 webbing. And the two places you see them attached are either on the hip rings themselves or on near the laterals. So some canopies, the laterals are attached to the hip rings, so to speak, and the actual hip point is a piece of webbing that's stitched together. Now this isn't too cool. I think only like a few rigs use them, like the wings and all that. This isn't used a lot anymore. But there's some people who prefer the belly band attached more up, like closer to your belly, to your belly button, so in line with your belly button, on the sides, of course, like Cedric, Cedric Vega Rios. He's a current world champion. He does use it like that. And there's some people, like most other guys, who prefer to use it on the hip rings. So again, this is personal preference. I would recommend people to try it out. Now, what type of webbing you use can also be discussed. So you can use type 17 webbing or type 8 webbing. Now, what I think you should think about this is, it depends really if you feel the belly band is uncomfortable or not. So if the belly band is uncomfortable, I would recommend you using type 8 webbing. If you're already using type 8 webbing and it's still uncomfortable, put a little bit of a belly band cover. Most people use it, the padding, I mean, and try it like that. Now, if for instance, like my case, your belly band really isn't pressing against like any part of your body when you're leaning forwards, which is my case because I wear a weight belt most of the times when I'm leaning forwards, then if it's not uncomfortable, just use a type 17 webbing and you're good to go. But if you do want to use a little bit of a thicker belly band to give you a little bit more support and maybe not hurt you as much, then you can use type 8. Now, for the type 17 webbing, if you prefer type 17 webbing and you like it attached to the stabilizers, a lot of manufacturers are including Cobra clips on the stabilizers, so you can attach a belly band to the Cobra clips. And I used it for 2 or 3 comps. I think it's not like the best option because for the amount I lean forwards, for how much I lean forwards, for it to be and the correct looseness, it needs to be really loose to the point when I'm free falling. If I have a little bit of a pad, if I have some padding on it, which I do use because it has a logo and I want to show the logo, the padding will actually come up and hit me almost, I'm not going to hit me in the face, but it like covers my handles. It's moving all around. So I stopped using it for a few days. I think I used, for the time I used it, I mean, I had a little bit of an elastic stitched in the back so I could attach it to my weight belt so that it didn't move. And it would be actually in the perfect place for when I leaned forward. But it still, it felt really, really loose. And it still wasn't tight enough. Still needed to be, loose. It wasn't loose enough. It wasn't allowing me to lean forwards as much as I wanted to without putting too much pressure on the belly band. So I started using the regular hip one, which I always used. And I do use a 17 type 17 webbing on my free fly rig, but it's been by me and it has a special attachment that I made. So it's a little bit different. But for the regular like loop, and you hoop the whole thing through the loop, you can use type 8. It's perfectly fine. There's one of the ways you can attach it, which is like a loop, like the whole piece of webbing makes a loop, and then you attach it, you pass it through. And there's another way which basically has 2 loops. One of the loops goes through the ring, and the other loop stays outside of the ring, and then you put a soft link. And I don't know what the benefits would be of that, but there's two different ways of doing it, whichever you prefer. Now, I kind of use a mix of both. One of the sides of my chest, of my belly band, has the loop that goes through itself. The other side has the two loops. One goes through the ring, the other stays outside, and then the soft link. Why? Because I actually have it modified so that I can have half of it be a Cobra clip. Now, this is a small Cobra clip. I only had this one for this competition in France that I came, so I just did it like real quick because I don't like to route the belly band, blah, blah, blah. It takes too much time, and I use it pretty much always in the same size. So I still have the adjustability with the on one side having the buckle that's adjustable, and the other side has a Cobra clip. So that's pretty much it about belly bands. Now let's move on to number 4, which is RDS slider. Or just RDS, removable deployment system. Now, there's a lot of components in the removable deployment system. It might seem simple, but it really has some things to it. So this is more about the slider part. Now, there's two things about the RDS of the slider part. First off, the way it connects to the canopy, or the way it connects to the rings. There are a lot of different ways, and there's even some magnetic ones that are super fast and snap-on that are being invented now and tested. I personally only use the Icarus one because, of course, the sponsorship does not really have a lot to do with it. Even before I was sponsored by Icarus, I had some canopies modified to use that system because I think it's the best system. It has 2 loops and the cable goes through 2 loops. So it's pretty difficult for the cable, pretty impossible actually, for the cable to be bent in a way where it gets pulled through. Other systems that only use like a U-turn, of the cable only does a U-turn and it can get pulled through because the U-turn is so wide, it can get pulled through. And then Performance Designs also has a system which is pretty cool. For it to be pulled through, it needs to do like a crazy W, so it is harder for the cable to be pulled through. But I just like the Icarus Canopies system, and I use it. I have thousands of jumps on it, and I don't see myself going away. The lanyard, you can use whatever you want. People tend to use Dracon, which is the cable that gets sent to you. So you use Dracon, I guess, or Dacron, or whatever, not Dracon, Dacron cable. Lanyard line, sorry. And then the really important part and the big tip is between the end of the lanyard, the RDS lanyard, and the actual D-bag, put a heavy-duty fishing anti-twist thing, which is basically a thing that rotates on itself. It's used for fishing, for the cables not to get twisted up and which doesn't make them more fragile. This is for that. When you're removing your slider, your D-bag is going to be rotating, wanting to cause huge twists on your cables. To avoid that, you use this fishing thing, and that drastically avoids the wrap that the twists that are caused from this from the D-bag rotating. So get on that. It's a top tip, old school tip. Now, number 5, deployment bag. Deployment bags that are so fucking simple. There's not much we can say about them. There's stowless and then there's stowed bags. I like stowed bags. I like the elastics. I think it's just better. Stowless are also nice. What I actually prefer, and this is a little bit not stupid, but just the way I do it, is my distance and zone accuracy canopy, or canopies rather, have full elastic bags. Just because it makes a little bit neater the way it fits inside of my javelin. It makes because the lines are actually in the bottom because I put the bag facing like with the bridle facing up, so the lines will be in the bottom. It packs the whole javelin a little bit neater. And my 59, because it has the 200-pound lines, I actually like the stowless bag because it makes it a little bit thicker, so it means it fills the rig a little bit more. So just personal preference again. And I find that when I was packing with the stowless bag, so it would make it a little bit more voluminous because of the place where the lines are actually being stored. It's in the side and not in the top of the bag. And with a normal pilot chute, if I was jumping from a slow dropping plane like a Caravan or a Pilatus, which is even slower, I would find myself having pilot chute in tows, and I would have to push it out. So this, again, can be solved by a bigger pilot chute, whatever. What I did was I stopped using the stowless bag. I just used a normal bag and a snatch pilot chute. So this is, again, part of this same thing, a nice pilot chute for hop and pops. Usually you'll have a hop and pop specific canopy if you're doing competitions. In that canopy, you can put a snatch pilot chute, which are amazing. I have them. I love it. I have one. I'll buy more if I need them. And then for my 59, which is smaller and again packs a little bit lighter on the rig, And the 200-pound lines, they slide better. I feel weird when I'm wrapping 200-pound lines in elastics because they're so thin. The 400-pound lines, it's fine at 200s. I feel really weird doing it, so I prefer stowing them like with a figure of eights and then the flaps rather than the elastics. So, and for the 59, of course, I use a normal pilot chute because it has enough traction to remove it from the bag. Now, speaking of having enough traction to remove it from the bag, moves us on to number 6, which is dynamic wingsuit cornerings for hop and pops. Now, there are dynamic wingsuit corners or whatever, wingsuit classic corners, whatever. There's a lot of options. Different companies have different names, but the dynamic corners usually mean that the bottom of the container isn't stitched to the sidewalls. It actually has a little bit of an extra fabric and rigid flaps that make it open flat. This is really nice, and most people use it for swooping. I don't have it on mine because Sunpath doesn't manufacture this option with the split colors design, so I don't use it. But I don't really feel like I need it. I did need it when I was doing like hop and pops with the canopy really tight and the rig was really new. Now the rig has some wear and tear to it. The canopies are also a little bit high, like a few jumps, 100 jumps that my Petra has now, the 66.6. So it does pack a little bit smaller, and the rig is a little bit looser. So everything is flying greatly now. So I don't have troubles with that. But if you do feel like you're having a lot of trouble with the pilot chute in toes, you might think about getting something like that. Number 7, leg straps and back padding. Now this is, of course, you can also use it for normal jumping. Yes, you can, but I'm just going to include it because it makes it so much easier on your legs to have nice padding, especially if you're wearing full weights. You have no idea when I'm like doing a competition where I'm wearing full weights on the 59, and then I'm doing one of those carving turns with the brakes, like completely like braking to wait for someone else to land, and then I'm like banking, and while I'm banking, all this G-force is pulling down on my legs and pressing the leg straps against my legs. And if you have like thin leg straps and they're crappy and the padding isn't good, you're gonna feel all of it, and it's gonna dig into your skin. It's not gonna feel nice. And Sunpath, they have really nice padding that isn't too hot, because this padding might feel hot if you look at it, but because it has the channels for refreshment, it doesn't feel too hot, and I really like it. The back padding, of course, comes, if you order the leg strap padding, it's going to come with back padding as well, so I might as well include both here. But the leg strap padding, I really enjoy it, especially with these thick leg pads. For swooping, for free flying, I love having thin leg pads that don't really bother me. Sometimes when you're sit flying, the thick leg pads will catch air and make you look like an idiot. But for swooping, I really like the thick, comfy leg pads. So I'll put it in here so that it saves you some pain. Whatever can save you from some pain that will distract you from the jump, it's a good money invested. Now, again, with the thick leg pads, reinforced leg straps are also a good idea. Now, with swooping, of course, you're going to be landing on your ass a lot. Be ready for that. And you're going to be destroying your leg pad covers completely. So, not leg pad covers, but they are actually leg pads. They're going to be pretty worn pretty soon. And if for some reason it starts to get to the actual webbing of your leg straps, you might need to replace it, and it might be really costly. Way more costly than getting leg pad covers or reinforced leg pads, which is what I recommend. I currently don't have it because I'm testing the wear and tear on the Javelin, but I did have it on all my other rigs. And if you have simple enough padding, you could just do like basically a cylinder of fabric that's open on both ends and just shove it in. That's what I used to do. But now, because my Javelin has a nice pattern on the leg straps and it's so comfy, basically when I need to replace it, but again, I'm testing the durability of this thing, of these leg straps, of this type of Cordura on the leg straps. If I need to replace it, I'll just replace this whole panel. I'm sure Sunpath will hook me up with a piece, or they'll replace it themselves. But if I wasn't testing, I would definitely have something protecting this so I can slide against that. And of course, if you do wear it down to the actual leg strap, so the Type 7 webbing, if you damage the webbing, you got to replace the whole thing, which isn't fun, especially if you're arriving in a comp and you really need to do it. And finally, on the swoop accessories on a rig, we have the 2-piece leg pads, which I think they're pretty useful. I always had rigs with 2-piece leg pads, or the cloud leg pads, I don't know what they're called, but 2-piece leg pads. And I never really appreciated them until I ordered a rig, and because it didn't come in standard with it, it was an Avalon when I was working with Avalon. because it didn't come standard. It just came with the one piece thing. And when you're flying like belly or whatever, where you're not moving a lot in the harness and all that, it's fine. But when you start like swooping and you need to move a lot in the harness, you need to reposition yourself, you got a weight belt under everything or whatever, you will feel that having that extra piece of fabric, it's going to be the fabric in tension instead of the straps. And you want the straps to be in tension because they're the ones controlling the canopy. So I found that it made it really weird when I wanted to sit back. It would create tension where the tension wasn't supposed to be. So I even modified my Avalon to have the two-piece leg pads. So I would recommend ordering two-piece leg pads. And for that matter, if you have the option of having hip rings and two-piece hip rings, which some containers I believe still don't come with it as standard, this is like mandatory for swooping because you need to move around and sit back on your rig and lean forwards and whatnot. So you really do need it. So two-piece leg pads with the hip rings or whatever, you really, really, really need it. Okay. Now, honorable mention or whatever would be people would ask, oh, do I need the chest rings as well? I don't know. Really, I've never felt any difference. I think like if you're free flying head down or angle, they might even make it slip out of your shoulders. But again, if the rig is correctly sized, I think that won't happen. For swooping, it makes no difference. I remember back in the day, I used to hear that it makes the canopy less sensitive because some of your inputs will be smoothened, let's say, by the movement of the hip rings, the shoulder, the chest rings. But I don't find this to be true. I find that my old rig and my new rig, which my old rig didn't have chest rings, my new one does. I find that it makes no difference whatsoever. And to the comfort, I guess maybe it's going to be a little bit more comfortable since you're not going to have the type 7 webbing creating resistance if you want to move around the rig. And for free flying, it's probably, and for belly, whatever, it's going to be probably a little bit more comfortable. But again, I don't feel any difference at all. So if you want to get it. It makes it easier to replace your chest strap. So if you need to replace it, for instance, for me, when I was starting out, I used a really long chest strap. And for my old rig, I wish I could shorten it because about a year ago, or 2 years ago, I stopped using the chest strap. I would just remove it, and it takes 1 second longer to store away, which 1 second can be important when you're competing. But my new rig has a nice and normal size chest strap because I don't use it. So all is good with the world. So guys, this was the first part of the video. I'm going to record the second video as well. So this is the actual rig accessory. So if you're thinking about buying a rig and you want to swoop, maybe watch this video, consider some of these accessories. Most of them you can actually get them on the website when you're ordering the rig. So yeah, get on that. Hope you guys liked the video. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe, or whatever, and I'll see you next time.